And we are going to start. Good evening. Welcome to the Independence Chamber of Commerce Candidate Forum in advance of the November 8th election. I'm Jeff Fox. I'm the editor of The Examiner, which is your voice of Eastern Jackson County. We cover Independence, Blue Springs, and Green Valley and have since 1898, and I'll be your moderator this evening. Thank you for coming out tonight, and thank you for watching at home. Tonight's format is very simple. Candidates will have 2 minutes each for opening statements, then 2 minutes to answer each question, and then 2 minutes again at the end for a closing statement. Timekeepers are seated at the front row, and I'll remind candidates, as I have all along, they're the real bosses here. You need to pay attention to them. We will have 3 rounds tonight because we have 3 different races that we're looking at. Republican Aaron McMullen and Democrat Mike Englert are running in District 20. We'll start with that. We'll go about a half an hour. We'll take just a couple of minutes. We'll come back with Democrat Robert Sauls and Republican Dakota Worrell in District 21, and then we'll do another quick break. And finally, we'll have Republican David Martin and Democrat Aaron Crosley in District 29. We'll be done just around 7:30 or so. We start in District 20. That is, help me out if I get this wrong, sir. That is roughly Sugar Creek and Independence north of US 24, including the River Bend area, and then out east almost to Buckner. And then also to the south, that district includes much of Independence, east of Missouri 291, and even crosses I-70 right at the southeast corner of the city. As I mentioned earlier, the 2 candidates on the ballot are Democrat Mike Englert and Republican Aaron McMullen. Mr. McMullen was invited to join us this evening, but he is not here. So we will simply have a few questions with Mr. Englert. And I have lots and lots of questions, and we only have a half an hour. But first, sir, I need to give you 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Well, my name is Mike Englert. I'm running for state representative in District 20. A little bit about me. I'm a lifelong resident of this area. I grew up in Independence. I went to Chrisman High School, graduated from Chrisman High School. I went to Longview Community College, graduated from Longview. And I went to Central Missouri State University and graduated from there with a criminal justice degree. I then went to law school at UMKC and graduated from UMKC about 33 years ago. So I've been a practicing attorney for 33 years here in Independence. As far as my legal career, I started out at the prosecutor's office in Jackson County. Then I went to the Kansas City Municipal Prosecutor's Office. Then I was a judge here in Independence for 3 years, an Independence municipal judge. And then I've been in private practice for about 30 years. After I graduated high school, I was employed with Bowen Construction Company as a laborer, and I worked for them for 8 summers, and that helped me to get through my college and law school. And I was a union member of 663, and I wanted to mention that because I believe the union helped me to get through school, and it also helps the middle class, I believe, in salaries by keeping salaries up for everybody. And also with pensions and other things. I believe it helps non-union workers as well by keeping their salaries up. I'm a small business owner. I own my building where my law practice is on the square, and I've been there for 30 years. I'm one of the few properties that Mr. McLean doesn't own. And I probably actually purchased my property before Mr. McLean started purchasing the properties. Not that I'm against Ken and Cindy by any means. I think they've done a great job up on the square. I believe it's an honor to be able to run for public office. I was not, the state Democratic Committee asked me to run after the other candidate dropped out. So I was asked kind of late in the game, not that that necessarily hurts my chances, but I do believe we live in the greatest country on this planet, and to have the opportunity to run is a privilege, and I'm grateful for that.
Shall we jump into some questions?
Yes.
All right. I've got plenty. We'll see how many we can cover in the next few minutes. Let's start with this. State revenues have been up significantly over the last couple of years and have led to an income tax reduction that was passed just last month by the General Assembly and signed by the governor. Did you agree with that reduction, or did you prefer the governor's proposal for a one-time rebate, or would you have preferred some different idea?
I probably would have preferred trying to use the money for other things. There are many other things that the state could use the money for. One would be helping the elderly with some programs. Another would be helping the young people as far as college grants or low-interest loans. And also, I believe there needs to be a program for younger people, some type of training program that would help younger people to get into real work jobs, such as carpentry, masonry, something in the alternative. The majority of the kids don't go to college. And if they get trained in a real-life job, computers, something, a real-life job that will prepare them for the world and also help them to make more money, if we could steer some of the money that way as opposed to giving it back to people. Not that I'm opposed to giving people back their money, but I think there's better uses for it.
All right, thank you. Let's go on to this. Homelessness is evident in our community. It's on the street corners, on thoroughfares. We see it everywhere in Independence, or many places in Independence. We see it elsewhere across the state. And advocates for the homeless say that a bill that the General Assembly passed this year will actually hurt because or at least it could, because it limits permanent housing for the homeless and funding for that. What should the state's role, if any, be in solving this problem?
The state has to try to have some type of role. The people are going to go somewhere, and they're probably going to do bad things to try to stay warm and try to eat. A lot of the people have, in my opinion, have mental problems, drug problems, alcohol problems that have to be addressed. But if we don't try to help them in a temporary way to give them shelter, they're probably going to find other ways to get what they need.
As you go door to door, asking people for their votes, what are the top three things that people are bringing up to you and telling you that it's on their minds?
I think they want they want their politicians to work and not fight. They want to see some direction. They want to see them working towards something, and they want to see them working for them as opposed to their own agenda.
So that's one. Any others stand out? Or is that the big main thing?
That's one of the big main thing. Another thing is taxes. Real estate taxes. They're griping about, and I'm griping about real estate taxes that have gone up so much recently, and apparently with no good reason. I don't mind being taxed. I understand I have to be taxed. But you like to see where your money's going, and you don't like to see dramatic increases
Right.
in your property tax for no apparent reason. I didn't sell my house, so I don't understand why I'm taxed.
Right.
I'm gonna have to pay that tax if and when I ever sell my house.
So let me jump on that. That's primarily local issue. Is there anything Jefferson City can do about that?
They could they can pass laws, yes, that would require the counties not to be able to do that or to go through more steps before they do that.
Like, would you favor circuit breakers, that kind of thing, to limit the increase in taxes over time?
Yes.
Okay. Let's jump to education, and forgive me for a few numbers, a few stats I'm going to throw at everybody here. The General Assembly this year found some more money for local schools, yet the NEA says Missouri has an average starting salary for teachers of $33,234. That's a year. That's second lowest in the country. The overall average teacher salary in Missouri is $51,557, which is 47th in the country. Last week, a state commission recommended that the state raise the legal starting minimum from the current $25,000 to at least $38,000 a year. Now, that's about $30 million statewide. It's got to come from somewhere if we're going to do that. Is that a reasonable place to begin the discussion about attracting and retaining K-12 teachers?
Yes. I would be for any bill that would raise teachers' salaries and try to attract them to stay longer in their jobs also. They're not paid for the amount of work they put in. It's more of a calling for them to do that, like other service work in other industries, but they should at least make a livable wage and get a decent retirement out of it after they put so many years in.
We live in very partisan times in our country, and we see that in Jefferson City as well. What will you do to work across party lines to benefit everybody in our state?
I would try to listen and try to help. It's not going to help get anything done. People have ideologies, different ideologies about things, but I've had to work for years with people with different makeups than mine. If I were elected, I would not go down there to do nothing, and I would not go down there for my own agenda to advance to something different. I would try to get in with a group of people that want to try to help the state of Missouri and pass some bills that would help the state of Missouri. I have some ideas, and I'm also open to their ideas if I think they'll help the state.
So let me follow up with like a tactical question almost. If you win, you're a Democrat, you'll be in the minority, and the majority runs things pretty, they get what they want. So what's your strategy? How do you work with Republicans to get what you need, what you think your district needs passed?
I would try to meet with them. If I were elected, I'd try to meet with them, talk to them, and listen to them, and see if they would be willing to let me in into their group. Because truly, if I'm elected to go down there, I want to try to help. I want to try to work. I don't want to go down there and sit around. I want to try to get something done. In order to get something done, I've got to work with them. There's no choice.
Right. Amendment 3 is on the ballot November 8th as well. That would legalize recreational marijuana in our state and would also expunge criminal records for low-level offenses related to marijuana. But there's a big catch. The proposal that's being voted on is very long, it's very complicated, it's 30-some-odd pages, whatever. It even lays out specific fines. And the voters are being asked to write that into the Constitution. And to make any tinkering or tweaking later, you've got to go back to the voters to do that, right? The General Assembly didn't act on this issue for years, and now we have this initiative petition. So here we are. It's probably going to pass. It's very popular. So there's a twofold question. Should the General Assembly have acted in a way to put something clean and straightforward in front of the voters? And then the second question is, as a policymaker, how do you sort out these problems that are going to arise downstream?
Well, the first part of the question, yes, I think they should put something on the ballot. The second part of the question is it's poorly written. And from a legal standpoint, it could be leaving itself open to litigation, but
Right.
It's something that I think should have been put on the ballot. The way it's worded is poor, but it's going to be passed. So it's going to have to be, or it'll probably be passed. It's probably going to go through some type of court process to get it cleaned up, in my opinion.
So just your take is that it's probably be more the courts and less the legislators who will have to clean things up.
I think so, especially in the immediate,
Right,
in
right.
the immediate taking of it.
Right.
Because there's too many things in it, in my opinion.
It seems as if it would be very hard, though, for the legislature to take control of that policy back, and some people would say that's really where those rules ought to be made, once we've done this. Do you see that as a problem?
Yeah, I see it as a problem for them to take it back or wanting to take it back because they'll, the ones that passed it would have to admit they made a mistake to start
Well,
out with.
yeah, okay.
So that's, that's not gonna,
Sure.
I foresee the courts probably cleaning it up in a
Okay.
way, so.
All right. The Dobbs decision came in June. Missouri's trigger law took effect. We have one of the most restrictive abortion laws in the country. Does more need to be done on that issue, or should the legislature leave things as they stand?
I believe it should go to a vote of the people. I think it's such a personal issue and such a divided issue that if it goes to the vote of the people, at least maybe the dust will settle for a
Mhm.
while. And,
Should we do essentially what Kansas did?
yes.
Okay. An issue that gets talked about in Jefferson City a lot, we can debate about how much actual action there is, but the issue that gets talked about a lot is workforce development. It's a critical need. We have employers in our state who can't find the skills the skilled people that they need. They can't hang on to them. What's the state's role in that, or does the state have much of a role?
I think the state should have a role in it, yes. We're trying to, we need to have better trained workers,
Mhm.
and it needs to be modernized to fit the workers, to fit the new working environment, and to train them, and it should be a win for both sides,
Mhm.
both the employer and the employee. But yeah, the state should have a role in that and have programs for that. And that's what I would like to try to help do that with some legislatures as far as having real-time education.
Mhm.
That's just how I'm putting it out there. It doesn't have to be necessarily the correct wording of it. By real-time, I mean not go to college.
Correct.
Education, I mean a working education.
We have this conversation, and we always kind of think about 18-year-olds, but there are also 40-year-olds who are an industry that's going away, and there's other things coming along. Should there be a role for that, too? Does the state have a role in mid-career changes, change one set of skills for another?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the same program could have help us, help that group of people. It wouldn't really matter what your age was.
Mhm. The General Assembly this year did act, this year or last year, I'll get it wrong, did act, however, to raise the gas tax in our state rather modestly, but for the first time in a long time. So there's a bit more money available to fix our roads and our bridges. Do you think it's enough? Do you think that issue is settled for a few years, or should we come back and do more with it?
We've let our system decay to a point where we're almost putting Band-Aids on the problem, and the cost of the product just keeps going up as
Mhm.
far as asphalt, concrete, bridge work, metal, labor. It's almost something that has to be taken care of at the federal level
Mhm.
and the state level combined to just do a major overhaul,
Right.
probably to fix. We're still using, a lot of bridges from the 1930s, across our state. So,
This is the first time you run for office, is that correct?
no.
No? What'd you run for before?
I ran for state representative before.
You did, okay. So what have you learned from that process, that knocking on doors? What'd you learn about your community that you didn't know before?
It's that it's so polarized. I enjoy meeting people, and I like people, but it's very polarized, and people seem to make up their mind without listening to the topic. So that's the hard part. I generally, though, I've had a good response from people, and I've enjoyed it. Very few people have slammed the door on me or anything, been rude to me, not hardly at all. It's been a good experience both
Okay,
times.
well, good deal, good deal. Well, we only have the one candidate here, and so we've been through a number of fairly good questions here, and I want to keep things running on time. So, sir, we do have 2 minutes or 2 minutes and 5 seconds, whatever it is you need to make your closing statement, and then we'll take a quick break and move on to the next one. Go ahead with your closing statement, sir.
Well, again, I just want to say it's an honor to be picked to run, and I believe we've got the greatest system in the world, and I believe the system works. And to have a choice at least to vote for one side or the other, and to be able to listen to what their views are. The Republican candidate and I are polar opposites. We're not even close. If people look at his stuff, at what he's put out, and what I just talked about, we're opposites in almost everything. So the people have a clear choice to vote, and I hope they just get out and vote, because that's what our country's all about. That's all I got. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that statement. A reminder, this is Democrat Mike Englert. He is running against Republican Aaron McMullen in District 20. Mr. McMullen was invited tonight. He did not join us. We will take a quick break, and we'll come back with the next pair of candidates. So stay tuned, please. And good evening again. We will resume our candidate forum here at the Independence Chamber of Commerce. We move on to District 21. District 21, and I'm going to, the incumbent may have to correct me on my map reading skills here, but basically it runs east to west across Independence, basically between the area between 24 and Salisbury, where it breaks off there, and then south to about 23rd Street, and then there are some other parts that, jut out here and there, but basically from the western edge of the city out to about Speck Road. Is that about right?
That's correct.
That's about right. So it's a big chunk of the city. There are two candidates on the ballot on November 8th. That's 2 weeks from today. Please remember to vote. Those candidates are Republican Dakota Worrell and Democrat Robert Sauls. Mr. Sauls, Representative Sauls, actually is seeking a third term. He is with us this evening. Dakota Worrell is not with us this evening. So we will do what we just did the one before. We have time for an opening statement, just the same as if both candidates were here. We'll have an opening statement. I have lots of good questions, or I have lots of questions, let's say that. And see, the room is giving me different feedback. And then we'll have a closing statement. We'll go roughly half an hour. So this is pretty straightforward. 2 minutes, sir, this is Robert Sauls, 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you. Thank you and good evening. Thank you to the Independence Chamber of Commerce, and Mr. Fox, thank you for doing this as well. My name is Robert Sauls. I am your state representative. I am not the Democrat state representative. I'm not the Republican state representative. I'm your state representative. I was born and raised here in Independence, Missouri. I am the son of 2 factory workers. I'm the first person on either side of my family to graduate from college. I was raised to stand up for people. I was raised to be the voice of those who are too scared to speak up, and that is why I went to law school. After law school, I became a prosecuting attorney. I was a prosecutor for about 6.5 years, where I prosecuted and convicted criminals. I support good cops and have always been an ardent supporter of law enforcement. I worked with law enforcement to keep our streets clean and put bad guys in jail. I have prosecuted everything from trespassing to murder. In addition to my work as a prosecuting attorney, I've also been a public defender, where I work to protect the individual freedoms of those who are wrongfully accused. I have defended the Constitution before various courts in this state and this country. Further, I've signed up to defend this nation as a member of the United States Air Force. I presently serve in the Armed Forces and am proud to be an officer and an assistant staff judge advocate. When I put on the uniform, it is a consistent reminder of service before self. And that is what I have spent my life doing. I'm a dedicated public servant. I've spent my life helping and protecting people. It is what drew me to this job in the first place, and it is what I'm going to continue to do as your state representative.
All right, thank you for your opening statement, and we can, again, we just have one candidate here, so we don't have to be sticklers on the 2-minute rule here, but we'll try to keep that as just a guideline. I've got some questions we can roll through. Let's start with this. State revenues have been up for significantly for the last few years. There's a lot of federal COVID aid, et cetera, plus just tax revenues are up. And that has led to an income tax reduction that was approved last month in a special session. Did you agree with that income tax reduction, or did you like the governor's proposal for a rebate, or would you have preferred yet a different option?
Well, I just want to say, so first off, I did vote for it. It's a straight up or down vote, right? I don't have the ability to change it. If I could change it would be different. I like targeted tax cuts. I think, quite frankly, if you give a single mom more money, she's going to spend it on her kids. I think that's exactly the type of targeted tax cut that I want to see. But I don't have the keys to the car, so to speak, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the legislature is 70% Republican. That's what they presented. So when it comes down to an up or down vote on whether or not I think my constituents should have more money, I'll support that, as I did then and as I would now. But like I said, I think it could have been better. I certainly would have rather seen it to be more targeted. I think, you know, if you're really trying to fix the middle class, if you're really trying to help the middle class, then giving people who live paycheck to paycheck, giving seniors living on a fixed income, giving single moms and single dads more money, I think that's exactly how you affect an economy. I don't think this bill was that, but again, it is something that does give back a little bit.
Homelessness is evident in our community and elsewhere in Missouri. We see it, you know, in our community all the time. Advocates for the homeless say that a bill that the General Assembly passed this year will actually hurt in that it limits permanent housing for the homeless. I'd like you to remind us how you voted on that bill, and then more broadly, what should the state's role, if any, be in addressing homelessness?
Sure. There's a lot to unpack here. Quite frankly, homelessness is a huge issue. It's an issue that I think we repeatedly fail on as a state. What I would do if I had the opportunity would be to expand on the Veterans Community Project. Mm-hmm. Veterans Community Project they're the little veterans tiny homes, right? They're probably about the size of basically from here to the wall and maybe from you to the end of the table. They're these small little houses that have everything you need, but the important part is not just the housing for the homeless, but the services that are provided. Nobody wakes up there one morning and says, you know what, I think I want to go live in the woods today, right? I mean, you're dealing with years of trauma, years of mental health, years of drug addiction, all kinds of poverty, all kinds of things feed into the why people think it's okay to live in the woods or to sleep under 435. And I think if you're really going to address that problem, you have to affect those things, because otherwise, I mean, I think we saw that during COVID. The city of Kansas City and the city of Independence both housed homeless people, and they put them up in a hotel room, and that's fine. But if you're not fixing the problem, then 60 days, 90 days, 6 months from now, you're still going to have a homeless person with the same issues. So personally, what I would want to do is something more like that, and that's what I've sponsored. That's what I've pushed for. 2 years ago, we got some money we have the Veterans Community Project here in Kansas City. We got some money for one in St. Louis, and I'm certainly in favor of expanding that. I think that's how you truly impact it. I did vote for the bill. Again, it's an up or down vote. It's whether or not I tried to make it better. I tried to add to it. I think it's just like any bill. I think there are problems with it, and I think there are concerns with it. But I think it's a step toward the right direction. Not I mean, it's certainly not perfect. What I think, like I said, I'm speaking, just repeating myself now, but the Veterans Community Project, doing more of that is what we need to do.
As you go door to door and stick out your hand and ask people for their votes and try to get your message across, what are the top three things that people are telling you?
You know, the biggest surprise to me is speeding. I've been doing this for 4 years. I do it every 2 years. With COVID, it was a little harder because of, I didn't actually, I would go door to door and drop off literature and
Right.
not really knock on the door, but if I saw somebody, I'd have a talk to them just because I didn't want to.
Socially distanced, of course.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
of course, that's what I was
Right.
trying to get at. So like I said, I've been doing this for 4 years, but one of the main topics is just the side streets and people speeding through between and maybe that's one of the other things too. My new lines now are going to be like, as you indicated, from Speck to Blue Ridge Boulevard, 24 Highway to 23rd Street with cutouts around Sugar Creek and down around Chrysler. But that's straight across the city, and a lot of people were complaining about people speeding back and forth between 24 and 23rd. And I personally saw that. I'm walking the streets. There's lots of places without sidewalks, and it's you're walking down the street and you hear a car engine revving. You look back and you're worried about that. But I think honestly that was one of the main ones, which I did not expect to be the case.
So not to put too fine a point on it, but there are critics of SB 5, which was passed several years ago, that greatly reduced cities' abilities to enforce their own local traffic ordinances. Is that, and I know it's been several years now,
Sure.
but is that something that the General Assembly should revisit and give the cities the power, to crack down on the people going 60 on Noland?
Yeah, I certainly think there were some problems with SB 5. There were also some, the main thing, the point that it was trying to get at was basically punishing poverty, right? We need to change some of the laws that we currently have. I don't like felony driving while revoked. It's something that you can get if you have more than 3 driving while revoked. The problem with it is someone gets a ticket. You pay the ticket because you don't have enough money to hire an attorney, and then you build those up, and after a certain point of time, now you're looking at a felony, which will absolutely affect your ability to earn income,
Right.
your ability to go to school, your ability for housing. So that was the point of SB 5, and I believe that actually passed before. I think that passed before.
I think it sounds right. But the criticism is that bill was in response to
Right.
legitimate issues,
Mm-hmm.
reforms needed on the other side of the state, but there's always unintended consequences, and Independence is among the cities
Sure.
paying that price. So what do we do? What do you guys do in Jeff City?
Yeah, I think certainly making it, part of the problem is when it deals with warrants and getting warrants and basically warrants not being treated as they're intended. So I think that's something we could do, and I know we've had bills in the past. I know I've worked with, my background kind of helps in that sense because I've done a lot of this work in my career, and I've worked with Representative Hafner has done a version of that bill to try to fix this issue, and I know that ultimately that's one of the things that we're trying to do. So do I think it should have some differences? Absolutely. Should we change it? Yeah, I think we need to make it so that you can actually get a warrant. But I think it's really threading the needle to make sure that that we're not punishing poverty, but fixing this problem as well.
Right. So let's jump to schools for a minute. The General Assembly this year did find more money for, pardon me, I'm fighting some eye issues, for local schools, and yet still the NEA says that Missouri has an average starting salary for teachers of $33,234. That's the second lowest in the country. Forgive me for all these numbers. The overall average teacher salary in Missouri is $51,557. That's 47th in the country. The State Commission just last week recommended that the state raise the legal starting minimum from the current $25,000 to at least $38,000. Now that's estimated about $30 million statewide. It's got to come from somewhere. Do you think that's a reasonable place to begin this discussion about how we attract and retain K through 12 teachers?
Sure. So one thing I think that's important is that the metric that we use to determine what teachers make is the foundation formula.
Right.
The foundation formula is based off of numbers from 2005. Now, I don't know about you and everybody else in this room, but 2005 dollars aren't the same as 2022 dollars. And I think that's one of the big issues that we've got. we fully fund the foundation formula. And that's something they say every time, we fully funded the foundation formula. This year, we also funded the transportation part of that, which is something we haven't done since I was in
Right.
high school.
Right.
Not to date myself, but it's been a while. And that is, like I said, so we do fully fund the foundation formula every year, but it's based off of a metric. The metrics we use are from 2000, almost 2 decades old. So.
So to be clear, the formula, we need to rethink some of these things.
The formula.
The
needs
formula
to-
itself.
It needs to be updated, right? I mean,
Right.
it's just not, we aren't paying teachers enough. We're not paying state employees enough. As I indicated in my opening, I was a prosecutor and a public defender. I've worked in government doing this for 2 decades, well, not 2 decades, but for a long time. And, it's the continually being asked to do more and more with less. I think we can be good stewards of money, of the people's money, to do the job, but also there are certain things such as this where we're just clearly failing. And that's what it is.
So I want to make sure I'm not leading the witness here. It sounds like you would favor rethinking the formula generally to help school districts generally, but specifically with an eye toward raising teacher salaries. Is that a fair way to put it?
Absolutely.
Okay, good deal. Jump to another complicated issue. Amendment 3 is on the ballot in 2 weeks. It would legalize recreational marijuana. It would expunge criminal records for low-level offenses related to marijuana, and yet some people who favor all of those things have some reservations about Amendment 3 itself. It is, the proposal that we're voting on it's long, it's complicated, it lays out specific fines, and the voters are being asked to write all of that into the state constitution,
Right.
which means you can only go back to the voters
Right.
to fix it. Pretty complicated. The General Assembly, for years, has taken a pass on this issue and has not put something cleaner and simpler in front of the voters. And you've been down there.
Yep.
You're not the majority, I get that, but you've done. So should the General Assembly have done that? And then what do we do? What do you guys in Jefferson City do to sort out all these complications that are going to arise?
So I had to take some water for that because
No,
this is going to be a long question.
I
or a
can
long
repeat the
answer.
question if you'd
No.
like.
So first off, let's start with the why, right? Lots of people are, why does this go in the Constitution? Why,
Yeah.
it goes in the Constitution because the General Assembly is, let's be clear about this, so I'm going to give you a little, I brought props. This is the Missouri General Assembly, 70% Republican, 30% Democrat. And that, the Senate looks just like this with 34, so it's 24-10, but basically that's what the Missouri General Assembly is. We could pass something we could put it as a ballot initiative that doesn't go in the Missouri Constitution. And what we would see is that the legislature, if it's something the legislature didn't want, for example, Medicaid expansion or right to work or raising the minimum wage or anything that the people have voted for and supported, they'd do away with it.
Yeah.
They said as much when it came to the Medicaid expansion. It was one of those things that passed 52, 53%. It was close, but it would have been, they would have overturned it, right? So that is why we put that, not we, that is why they put things into the Constitution, because if you don't, the legislature, you put all that work in, you try it, and then the legislature just goes around and undoes it.
So that's the reason for the complication.
That's the reason for the
Gotcha.
complication, and I otherwise, I actually filed a bill. I filed a bill my first year, and I file it every year, and it doesn't go anywhere because they don't want it to. But it would give protections for ballot initiatives, so that it would basically make it so that after, because you can't bind future legislations, but you can say it has to stay in place. Whatever bill passes has to stay in place for, for the first term, for one term, and then after that, it takes a certain amount of people to overturn it. So dwindling down to the point that you could eventually overturn it, but at least gives it the shot to be law. So that's the why. And I know I've spent 2 minutes on the why, but this is an important question. So another thing I would encourage is I've gone through and I do this every year too. I've gone through every single ballot initiative and gone through it and explained in great detail on my Facebook page. So Robert Saul's Facebook, I went through 4 of them, I want to say in August, and then marijuana was, I don't know, within the last 2 weeks. What I do, though, and this is the important part, is that I give positive, I give what people like about it, and I give what people hate about it. So that way, it's an informed decision where you get to make up your mind. So you look here and you're like, all right, well, I see this is the good stuff, this is the bad stuff, I'm going to weigh in, and I try to be very fair about that. As to the problems with it, I can personally, what I don't like about it is I don't like the caps on licenses. The problem with that is, and it's what we've got with medical marijuana. So basically, there's a certain amount of licenses, and this is all we're going to have. Well, as we found out with the medical marijuana, not everybody has $100,000 to throw in on a license, and if you do, with no guarantee that you're going to come out being able to make that money back. So it's a very big risk. Though there are caps on the licenses, just as they are, it's kind of an extension of that process. And that is one of my biggest complaints, because I don't think, if you're going to put up that kind of money and not have any kind of guarantee on return, and let's be honest, some of those connections, some of those licenses are given to people who have connections. So now you're somebody who, so let's say you don't know the governor, you don't know the people who can kind of ease this through.
So let me jump in there.
Yep.
Is there something the General Assembly can do to make that a more just and equitable system?
Does the General Assembly want to? That's the question. Could they? Absolutely. I mean, but again, it comes down, it goes back to this thing, right? I mean, and that's really what we're looking at.
Okay.
I think that we had a great bill come through that this year that was basically, and it was from a senior who's a Republican out of St. Charles, who took a bunch of the a bunch of the marijuana bills, put them together. They had a hearing. It came out of committee, got to the floor, and then died.
Right.
And we never got to vote on it. It would have been a much better bill than this bill. The problem is that if this bill, this is how I see it, and it's kind of the long game approach to this. The General Assembly doesn't want to do this. They don't want to do marijuana for multiple reasons, and there are reasons, there's, like any issue, there's good reasons for and bad reasons for. And I get that, right? I mean, I can totally understand and appreciate someone coming to this and saying, I don't think we should have marijuana sales. I don't think we should legalize it. I understand. I think there's a part to it as well. There's a revenue part to that, and there's other things too. I mean, right? There's dealing with the fact that we've had, and this is in the bill. This is one thing that's in the bill that I do like, the ballot initiative. And that is, it deals with taking care of this, if you have a felony conviction or misdemeanor conviction for marijuana possession and it's now legal, then it helps to fix that, because that's not fair either, right? If at the end of the day, if we are now saying this is legal, then we should go back and fix the problem that we've had in the past. So
Good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So headaches for years to come. That's why we have marijuana. Okay, let's jump to something else. I want to pick up on your seating chart. We live in very partisan times in our country, and you see it in Jefferson City. What will you do to work across party lines to benefit everybody?
Sure. So first off, I've done that. I bring up the seating chart just because I don't think people understand that. People, unfortunately, most of the districts aren't competitive. There are about 15 competitive districts in the state. And I think we are living in polarized times, and I think that's one of the difficult issues to this, right? I mean, but as far as working across, I mean, I do it all the time. I have one of my good friends, I consider him to be a good friend, Lane Roberts is the chair of crime prevention. I'm the ranking member of crime prevention, so he's the head Republican on the committee, I'm the head Democrat on the committee. And we get along great, right? I mean, and what has happened since I've been there is that oftentimes others will come to me with their legislation and I'll work with them, right? I have no problem. My job is to try to put up good legislation. I don't care who brings it, I don't care, right? I mean, I've helped people all the time. I've passed legislation myself. And the way you do that is by building relationships. And I mean, I suppose it comes a little bit natural for me as an attorney. I mean, that's a lot of what, I mean, that's a lot of what the practice of law is. It's negotiation and working around the table to try to make something better. So I think for me, it's just kind of natural. And as far as working, across the aisle, I mean, I support a lot of different issues. If I support my community and the people of my community, and there are times that maybe I don't personally agree with something, but I think it's what my community want, and that's what I do, because I think that's what a good representative would do.
So next question. Dobbs' decision came in June. Missouri's trigger law took effect. We now have one of the most restrictive abortion laws in the country. Should the General Assembly leave it there, or should it come back and do something else?
Well, so the General Assembly, I'm going to keep pointing to this. So House Bill 126 came through the legislature in 2019. I was down there. The argument was made, hey, this has no exceptions for rape and incest. We presented it, tried to get it on to the bill. The Republicans didn't want it on the bill. And when it came out of the General Assembly, out of this, only one Republican voted no.
This is the trigger bill.
This is the
trigger
trigger
law
bill.
that's
This is
in effect now.
The
yes.
bill that Dobbs' decision, when the Dobbs decision came down, House Bill 126 was the trigger bill that had that language in it with no exceptions for rape and incest. One Republican said no. So are we going to do anything with it? Probably not. Should we? Yes. Because at the end of the day, I think people have differences of opinions on abortion, and I understand and I respect that. But I was a prior prosecutor. I have seen 10-year-olds pregnant with stepdad's baby, and I just don't, I can't get behind it. I don't, it's just, I don't think that's my job as a government official to tell you how you should operate in that situation. I think it's a very, very tough, difficult, stressful, traumatic situation, and I don't think I'm the one who should come in and say, this is what you need to do. So I think that ultimately we should do just like Kansas did, and put it to the vote of people and see what they say.
One quick last question before closing statements. Transportation, the General Assembly's done a little bit. Gas tax, is it enough or not?
Gas tax.
Or transportation generally?
Transportation, so our roads are atrocious. They've been atrocious for a long time. And it comes down to the General Assembly not wanting to fund it, not wanting to address it. It's an ongoing problem. The gas tax isn't going to cut it. To be perfectly honest, if I'm being honest, I didn't vote for the gas tax. The people didn't pass it. I kept it with what my community, what I felt my community wanted, and I didn't. Do I think we need to do more? Absolutely. But I think we're sitting on $15 billion at the state level. We're sitting on $15 billion. Homelessness, roads, schools, you take a pick. Something, right? Also, not everybody's a fan of this, but quite frankly, I think even having a toll road on I-70 makes sense, because when you're talking about the gas tax affects everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
I pay more, you pay more, the single mom pays more, everybody pays more. A toll road, and I know a lot of people aren't going to agree with this, but at the end of the day, a toll road, if you put it outside of Kansas City and St. Louis on I-70, without 30 miles out or so, most people aren't going to, I drive to go to Jefferson City, but most people don't make that trek back and forth. If you do, then odds are it's through your employer, and there should be avenues through the employee, like for example, a truck driver, right? Make it so that that's part of business, that you get that the truck driver gets a tax break on for that kind of a thing. So, but I think there are better ways to do it. But I absolutely think we're not doing enough.
Okay. Well, good deal. We've covered a fair amount of ground here tonight, but we do need to keep moving. We've got one more
Okay.
set of candidates, so I've got 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes, if you'd like to make a closing statement.
Sure. Again, I want to thank you for having me here today. This is my third debate, and I got to say I'm a little frustrated that that my opponent hasn't been to any of them. You know, I've also filled out the questionnaires and things of that nature, and this is kind of an ongoing thing. And I'm not going to spend any much time on that, other than to say, you deserve better. You deserve people who are willing to show up, because that's what leaders do. Leaders do not refuse to answer questions. They come in and they answer those. To those of you listening right now, we may not agree on everything. If you've ever been married or been in a long-term relationship, I'm sure you know what that's like. But I'm confident that we will agree on many things, and I will give you this. I will always listen. I will always show up, just as I always have. Over these past 4 years, I've been your state representative. I've shown up to just about every single forum. I've been to multiple Independence Chamber of Commerce forums. I can't even tell you how many. I've hosted town halls. I've participated in debates. I've answered your questions. I've gone door to door. I've sought assistance for you time and time and time again, because that is what you deserve, and that is what I would want in a state representative. I continually reach across the aisle to work with Republicans on issues that affect you. I did not vote for the gas tax, even though, to be perfectly honest, Republicans are the ones who passed the gas tax. I filed a bill to do away with taxes on food and groceries. I filed it last year. I'll file it again this year. I voted for the biggest income tax bill in this state's history. I've sponsored legislation to get and got added to an overall property tax bill that works to fix many of the problems that we had in 2019 and 2020. I know exactly what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. I know exactly what it's like to get to the end of the month and worry about which bills are going to get paid and which ones will not. Far too many Missourians know this as well. And the 70% Republican-controlled Missouri legislature has been in charge for 20 years. You know, something that was mentioned earlier about the metric, about the foundation formula and the metric we use. We are 49th, 47th, 50th in the nation in starting teacher pay. That's why our roads are garbage. That's why our crime rate has spiked. The answer to this problem is to not add more Republicans to the 70% supermajority. It's to elect more moderates like myself. I represent the people of the 21st District, not just those who say they're Democrat. I represent you, and that is the service before self that is ingrained in me. I'm the only Democrat in the entire state to win a district Donald Trump won. And I did that because I treat this job as working for you. I don't care if you identify as a Republican or a Democrat. We are going to agree on things, and I'm going to work to try to make your life better.
Final thoughts, sir.
I identify as an American first, and an American who's kind of tired of some of this crap that we deal with. As your state representative, I will continue to fight for you just as I always have. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. This will be the third of our three rounds of candidates. We are up to District 29. This is, by the way, the Independence Chamber of Commerce State Representative Candidate Forum. For those of you who may just be tuning in now, we are up to District 29. That runs east to west across Independence and more or less straddles I-70, a little bit more to the north, but still. It's oblong, and it has areas that jut out kind of here and there, but basically it lies between 23rd Street and down to US 40, and then takes in some parts of the city south of 40. Is that about right?
That's about right.
Okay, the candidates say I'm close and I know how to read a map. The two candidates on the November 8 ballot are Democrat Aaron Cross, excuse me, it's been a long night, Democrat Aaron Crossley, and Republican David Martin. We flipped a coin, I guess, and Mr. Martin will go first. I guess I should remind folks of our format. We'll have 2-minute opening statements, questions with 2-minute answers, and then we'll have closing statements, and we're going to do this in about a half an hour. So we will have 2 minutes first from David Martin.
Okay. Yes, I'm David Martin. I'm the Republican nominee out of the primary. I had a 3-way primary for the nomination. I am a truck driver. I've been a truck driver for the last 15 years. I got into politics in 2016 in the presidential election. I was elected also to the Republican committee. I've been a committeeman since then, and I'm looking to serve the people of Independence, District 29, and I look forward to it. Go ahead.
Very good. Opening statement from Aaron Crossley.
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to thank the Independence Chamber of Commerce for hosting this forum. Thank you, Mr. Fox, for moderating us and wrangling us tonight. And thank you to those of us who are watching at home. Thank you for being an active, engaged citizen. And thank you for those of you that have shown up. Again, my name is Aaron Crossley, and I am a first-time candidate for office, and I am running for House District 29. I'm running because our community deserves someone who has a vested interest in our community and someone who is invested deeply in our community. My wife, Jessica, and I moved here when we got married in 2006, and unfortunately she couldn't be here tonight. She's at home caring for our son, who fractured his wrist doing something that only 14-year-old boys could do, I guess. So Corbin is 14. He's a freshman at Truman High School, and so please pray for me. And also our daughter, Isabel, she's 12, and she is a 7th grader at Pioneer Ridge Middle School. Our community deserves someone who will fight for our children to have a great education, someone who will fight for workers to have jobs that pay a good wage, for physical and mental health care resources that are accessible to everyone, and for neighborhoods that are safe. And I believe what makes me most qualified for this position is that I'm already doing this work. I'm a social worker by profession, and I've spent years advocating for the people that I've served in our community. And now in my current professional role, I work in a community mental health center up in leadership in a policy level creation level to make sure that no one is left behind. I believe that all of this has prepared me to start day one in Jefferson City, and I look forward to sharing more thoughts and views tonight as we continue.
Thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. We will now go to questions. This question will go first to Mr. Crossley, and we'll just kind of toggle back and forth on that. The question for both candidates is this. State revenues have been up significantly over the last couple of years. There's a lot of federal COVID money, et cetera, and state revenues, tax revenues are way up. That led to an income tax reduction last month during special session. Did you agree with that reduction in personal income taxes, or did you like the idea that the governor proposed of a rebate, or would you have preferred yet a different idea? First to Mr. Crossley.
I agree with the intent behind the tax cut. I think the intent was to get more money back in people's pockets, which is always a good idea. It's our tax money that's down there, just like you said, with the revenue overage. It's just kind of being pooled down there when it could be back in our pockets and back in our community, making a difference. I don't think that the tax cut that was passed did that. It didn't do much. It didn't do anything for retirees who are on limited incomes. It didn't put any money back in their pocket to help them pay for food. It put about $3 back a year in the lowest 20% of income earners. And for the middle 20%, it only put about, to start with, it only put about $60 a year back in people's pockets. You know, they could have done a lot more, like cutting the sales tax on food, which I would like to explore. It's been mentioned previously this evening that we have about $15 billion, billion with a B, just sitting down in Jefferson City's bank account. And, you know, that could have gone to help give people a gas tax holiday. So, you know, our gas taxes do pay for our roads and bridges. But right now, with billions of dollars in the bank, we could have maybe given ourselves a little break at the pump and still been able to take care of our roads and bridges. So I support the intent, but I don't really think that it did much for many Missourians, except for the most wealthiest. It put about $10,000 back in the 1%'s pocket. And I don't think it's fair that middle income earners bear the brunt of our social programs.
Mr. Barton, your thoughts?
Okay, so the question.
Sure. It's that the General Assembly, the governor wanted to do rebate. Legislators didn't like that idea. They came up with an overall cut in the personal income tax. So did you like the cut in the income tax, or do you like the governor's idea, or is there something else that the General Assembly should have done instead?
Well, I appreciate the cut in taxes. I think there is more that could have been done and should have been done. There wasn't, a lot of the legislators, some of them I've talked to that I'm friends with, would have liked to see more done for the taxpayers so that they could have more money back in their pockets. You know, in the future, there's more opportunities for tax cuts this next session. I look to do more, along with the other legislators, to reduce taxes, whether it's income tax or, like Aaron had mentioned, our sales taxes. I'd like to see more done, and when I get there, I intend to do that.
We'll go to our next question, and we'll toggle back and forth. This will go first to David Martin. The question, and forgive me for some numbers here, but the General Assembly this year did find money for get more money for local schools for the first time in a while, really. But the NEA still says that Missouri has an average starting salary for teachers of $33,234. That's the second lowest in the country. The overall average for teachers' salaries in Missouri is $51,557. That's 47th in the country. Last week, a state commission recommended that the state raise the legal starting minimum from the current $25,000 to at least $38,000. That would cost about $30 million statewide. That's the estimate anyway, and that's got to come from somewhere. Local taxpayer, state, it's got to come from somewhere. But is raising that to the $38,000, is that at least a reasonable place, do you think, to start the discussion about how we attract and retain K-12 teachers?
Yes. Well, yes, I agree that teachers deserve to be paid what they're worth and their hard work that they put into teaching our children. I would like to see their pay increased. I would also like to see parents and children be able to go to the schools of their choice and have opportunities for a quality education, and for the teachers to have an opportunity to teach, not just in the public school system, but in the private sector. And that would, you know, I would like to see children not just be tied to schools in their zip code and be able to go to a school of their choice, whether that's through vouchers or through, some method for the children to go to the school of their choice. And that would help teachers as well by teaching at a school that best suits them and that pays them fairly.
Mr. Crossley, K through 12 teachers.
Sure. You know, I think raising it up to 38,000 is still pretty abysmal when we consider that that's about what a state legislator makes for working 5 months of the year. When we expect a teacher to live on $38,000 for the whole year. So I don't think that that's fair. And, you know, I've heard a lot of people of every political stripe kind of complain about the outcomes that we're getting out of our schools. And we only get out of things what we put into them. And so if we are putting an abysmally low amount of money and funding into our schools, then we can't expect anything different. I do worry about school choice, because school choice really only gives private schools the choice of they still set their own acceptance standards. And so if we're sending our tax dollars into private schools and into private hands, that means that those schools can still choose which students come there and which ones don't. So I don't know that that opens up a lot of equitable path, and it takes more money out of our public schools. It takes more opportunity away from us to be able to fund our public school teachers well. So I would like to see more funding. Again, you know, it's been mentioned, we are at the bottom of how we fund our schools, and our teachers and our kids deserve more, because the schools are what prepare our children for the workforce. Their education is what prepares them to be adults. And to best prepare them, I think we need to invest in our schools to work to create early childhood education opportunities for our students, and creating real-world experiences, especially for our high schoolers who are preparing to enter the workforce. And one thing I love about our independent school district schools is that they have the academies that they've created to be able to prepare students to be able to enter the workforce as soon as they exit high school.
So our next question will go first to Mr. Crossley and then to Mr. Martin. It's this: as you go door to door, knock on doors, stick out your hand, ask for the voters' vote, and try to make your pitch, what are the top 2 or 3 things that people are throwing back at you, and how do you respond? What's on people's minds?
It's the polarization of politics, crime and independence, and protecting our public education system. You know, I myself have felt politically homeless throughout my adult life. I have existed on all sides of the political spectrum throughout my adult life. I was raised Republican. I was a Republican most of the time that I've been an adult, and at times I still feel politically homeless. I understand how frustrating it is to look at our state legislature, to look at our city government, to look at our federal government, and feel like no one is working for us, and instead they're fighting with each other. Crime is a rising issue in our community, and a lot of the time the way that we tackle crime is reactionary. And I think we need to look more upstream and figure out how to stop crime before it happens. We need to invest in our police and pay them well. We need to train them well. And our first responders, I'm happy to be endorsed by our firefighters and the 911 Dispatchers Union here in Independence, CWA 6360. And lastly, education, and we've already covered that topic, so I won't belabor the point, but everybody that I've talked to that brings up education loves our public schools and want us to continue to invest in them and protect them.
Mr. Martin, at the doorstep, what are people telling you?
Okay, so early on when we were out there on the campaign, we were dealing with people who had dealt with all the mandates and losing jobs, having their businesses closed over COVID. So those were top of mind when I started. Now, as the months have passed, we've got people who were concerned, yes, about their children's education. They're worried about what's being taught to their kids from CRT, divisive CRT in the curriculum that divides children and doesn't recognize our country as a great place to live. So they are concerned about that. And they're also very concerned about our economy, the price of our groceries, the price of our fuel going up through the roof. People are concerned about the things that are affecting their everyday life. They have to go to work, make money to buy food. I bought Doritos. My son remembers this. He's 10 years old. Bought Doritos at Walmart, and they were $2 a bag. They're now over $4 a bag at Walmart. It's ridiculous. So those are the things top of mind. And I believe that we can do more to lower, the taxes on people, including some of the things that we brought up, like the fuel tax. I was never a supporter of that, and I think if we can do something to reduce that, that's going to help.
This next question goes, we'll go back to you, Mr. Martin, for a first response on this one. Homelessness is evident in our community. We know that. We see it pretty much daily in Independence, and we see it elsewhere in the state. And advocates for the homeless will even go so far as to say that the bill that the General Assembly passed this year may actually hurt things because it limits permanent housing for the homeless. I guess that raises the question, what role, if any, does the state have in addressing this problem? Mr. Martin.
Okay, well, yes, I recognize the homeless problem. I've seen it. We see it every day. We see it here in Independence. We see it a lot in Kansas City. And I drive around. I'm a truck driver, so I see it throughout Kansas City when I did routes in the city. But what can we do about it? It's very difficult when Kansas City had a mayor who participated in funding and putting homeless people into hotels and motels here in the city. We had an explosion of people come here for housing. So there's more here than there used to be by offering these kind of these programs that failed. They failed everybody that was involved in it. Some of these people have mental issues, psychological problems, and I think the best thing to do would be to treat those issues that they're dealing with. Not just give them a home, a house, and pretend that it doesn't exist. These people have psychological problems, and I think that's where we need to start.
Mr. Crosley, does the state have a significant role, the General Assembly, that's what you're running for, does it have a significant role in this issue?
Yeah, when I first started working at the hospital where I work at, I worked in our homeless outreach program. So I went out into homeless camps and helped try to connect people to services. Sometimes that takes one time, sometimes that takes 7 or 10 times to convince people that they need help and that we have help available to them at the hospital where I work. So I know what it takes to end homelessness. I think I know what it takes to be able to address it here in our city. One of the issues that has already been mentioned is that people are migrating this way, and it's a lot of it has to do because there's a lack of affordable housing in Kansas City that is left. Also, a lot of the services that were being provided down there are not. And now that they are over here, there are very few services. All of the services that homeless folks rely on are down in the city. And so once they get over here, they're kind of stuck, and there's not as much over here to help them address their homelessness. Again, we have billions of dollars down in Jefferson City that is just sitting down there in a bank account. So I think we can use some of that funding to help address those folks. I also work in mental health myself, and so I do know that some of what they're struggling with are some mental health issues, and I want to help unleash some resources for them. And at the end of the day, it's not fair to residents of Independence either to have it go unchecked. And so I think it's important that we address it, and I think the resources are there to be able to do that.
Got time for one or two more questions. This one goes first to Mr. Crosley. Look, you guys have touched on this a little bit. We live in a very partisan time in our country, and we see that in Jefferson City as well. What will you do if you're in Jefferson City to work across party lines to benefit everybody in our state? Mr. Crosley. Sure.
I think, I will continue to do what I have been trying to do, and when I'm having political discussions, I try to stick to policy and not dive into party. I think people are tired of that, of looking at a discussion and just seeing one whole group of people being dismissed because of what political party they belong to. And so I try really hard to stick to policy, because I think what would behoove us the most as a country is to get back to discussing policy and character of people, and not just what party they are a part of. I already mentioned before that I was raised Republican, so when I think of people on the other side of the aisle, I think of my family, and I think of what great grandparents my parents are to my children. I think of my aunts and uncles. I think of the friends that I grew up with and still am friends with. So I think it's important that we stop demonizing whole groups of people and just stick to policy discussions. And at the end of the day, looking at data and what has worked in the past and what hasn't, and sticking to those.
Mr. Martin, how do you work across the aisle?
Well, I agree with working with people as long as they agree with me. No, I'm just kidding. But I think that we need to look at what's best for our community first, whether it's, for our residents, for our children, and that's where we need to start. And I think most people would agree on that. And that's about all I can say there,
Okay, good enough. It gives us time for one more question. It's and I'm going to try to complicated question and 2-minute answers. It goes first to Mr. Martin. We're going to vote on legalizing marijuana in the state in 2 weeks. It's probably going to pass. It's a very complicated issue that's going on the ballot. It legalizes marijuana for recreational use. It expunges records for low-level offenses in the past. But even people who support those things have some problems with this bill. It's this measure. It's long. It's complicated. We're writing it into the state constitution. Is there a better way? Should the state legislature have done more up to now, and how do you sort it out going forward?
Okay, so this issue, I think a lot of people know, I supported medical marijuana. I think it was important, and I supported it at the legislative level. And what happened was, through another initiative process, we ended up with it written into the Constitution. And it included a lot of, garbage with it. So, and it's kind of hard to undo what's there now. So we're looking at doing the same thing over again to our Constitution. And I do not support it. We have people across, not just on the Republican side, on the Democrat side, and minorities that oppose this. Maybe not all for the same reason, but they oppose it for equity reasons, because they feel like it's going to disenfranchise minorities. They also, you've got other issues with it besides that. I mean, we're looking at creating a new bureaucrat there, for the equity officer, and that to me is weird, who's unaccountable to anybody. It's in the, how many pages, I can't even remember how many it was, but I have friends here that do know, that have looked into it. And I was going to go a little further here, but I can't, kind of lost my train of thought. But I do not support it. I think it's a very bad thing to pass, and for a multitude of reasons. And I think that our legislature needs to address it first. And I think the voters see that it's not good for us, and I believe that the voters will vote it down.
Mr. Cross, there's a lot there, a lot that we barely scratched the surface, and you've got 2 minutes to sort it out. What are your thoughts?
Okay, well, here we go. Yeah, you know, I think it is unfortunate that our state constitution keeps becoming so bloated because our legislature refuses to take action on so many issues that are important to citizens of Missouri. I think, you know, I do support the legalization of recreational marijuana, and I think this might be the only opportunity to do that. And at the end of the day, there have been too many fathers ripped out of families and ripped out of communities and put in jail because of marijuana. And I can't imagine how much stronger those communities would have been if those fathers and mothers and aunts and uncles would have remained in their community. So I do support the measure because I think it's the only opportunity that we may have. I think also, you know, it expunges past and prior records, and I think that that's important. And at the end of the day, the clock is ticking for people that have those kinds of records and who can't get jobs and can't get back up on their feet because of those records. And so, while I disagree with a lot of what's in it, and I think it's unfortunate that you know, our state legislators, by an overwhelming majority, just decided not to take action on it. I think at the end of the day, people need to be back with their families and not penalized for something that a lot of people are doing, even though they say it's medically. You know, a lot of people are just doing it anyway. So.
We've had a lot of good back and forth here tonight. We've got a couple minutes for each candidate to make their closing statements. It goes first to Mr. Crosley. 2 minutes, please.
Well, thank you again for listening tonight. Thank you for being here and being an active citizen in our democracy. I already said this before, but my family and I have put deep roots down here in Independence, and we have been proud to call Independence home for almost the last 2 decades. We've volunteered as a family to help spiff up our ISD schools during Project Shine. We've provided spiritual comfort and direction when I served as a pastor at a Baptist church, and then when we had a church in our home. I've represented Independence on a community advisory council of a regional health foundation. And professionally, Jessica serves grieving families at a funeral home as a funeral director here in Independence. And I've supported countless people in Independence in finding employment and being able to stay successfully in their own home. I've spent my adult life walking alongside people who feel forgotten. And now, as I've walked across my district and talked to thousands of my neighbors, it's clear there are many of you who feel forgotten by your local government, forgotten by your elected representatives, and by serial politicians who are seeking nothing but power. You deserve to be heard and to have an advocate that will work hard for you and take action on your behalf in the state capitol, and that's exactly who I will be. Representative government means that I should be accessible to you, which is why I have my campaign email set to blast my phone as soon as I get one. And I also have my cell phone number on my website, so you can call or text anytime you have any questions or thoughts before the election. And after I'm elected, please feel free to reach out when I'm in the Capitol with whatever you need. Thank you again for your time, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.
David Martin, up to 2 minutes for your closing thoughts.
Okay, yes. So I'm David Martin. I'm District 29. I started this campaign. I've worked really hard. I had a 3-way primary. I worked hard in that campaign in order to win. I knocked doors. I've talked to the voters. I've been out there every day since March. And as hard as I've worked in this campaign, I've continued into the general election, working hard, going door to door, talking to the voters. And I think the people recognize that and they appreciate it. I believe that they will support me in November. But I have so let me go back up just a little bit. I am a single father. I have a 10-year-old son. I'm a truck driver. I've been a truck driver for the last 15 years. I started out as an over-the-road truck driver, and now I do LTL deliveries here in Missouri, local. And And so I know what people are dealing with out here. The cost of fuel, the price of everything has gone through the roof because of the cost to transport it. So we have to charge people more just to get their products to them, and the groceries, of everything to the stores. And I recognize that, and I think people appreciate that I recognize that. I hope they do. And I'm going to work hard for them after I'm elected in November. So I'm not very organized here. I don't have it all written down here for you. So, but the best I can say, I've worked really hard. I intend to continue to work hard when I'm in Jeff City. And I thank you for your time.
And I thank both of you for your time. I thank all 4 candidates who joined us this evening. It's been a really pretty good discussion of events in our community and in Jefferson City. A quick round of applause for the candidates. I want to thank our timekeepers for keeping order on the universe this evening. The Independence Chamber of Commerce, Tom Lesnick and his crew deserve a lot of thanks. By my count, this is like the 5th of these they've done this year. Yeah. And I want to thank the folks who've come tonight and who've tuned in and have put up with my increasingly creaky voice as the evening has gone along. And I would remind everyone that in our state, the polls open at 6 o'clock in the morning on Election Day, and they are open until 7 p.m., and everybody has an obligation and the right to go vote, so do so. Thank you, and good night.